What's going on, folks? It is Ariel, and we got Coach Charisma here. It is week 11. We have an opportunity to talk about responsible AI. And a part of responsible AI is making sure that you dealing with your data properly, introducing a good representation of the data to the model that's be handling responsible AI. Maybe even setting up some guardrails, right? Which is the topic that we'll talk about to govern our outputs to make sure that we're not exposing internal information and all of that. And really, I think because we've been talking about this all throughout the weeks, right? Yeah, it's just a conversation that you need to have with any application and whatever process that you're going through, right? It needs to be tied into every part of the pipeline, so to speak. But domain 4 here, and this is our opportunity to, as it says, explain the development of AI systems that are responsible. With that in mind, Coach, there's been some new updates, right? New updates, positive updates, considering AWS allowing you to use DeepSeek, right? And so we'll do just that. We'll jump into one particular article that we were considering. We were talking about just recently how you can go right into Amazon Bedrock and use DeepSeek R1 as a model, right? You can go inside of Bedrock, and we already showed you how to go and make a request for models that you want to have access to. So it's your opportunity to jump on DeepSeek R1. But why do you want to jump on DeepSeek R1, right? Why is this important to you as you're building out applications? I remember a time when we spoke about DeepSeek R1 in the past, Coach, and one of the highlights there was really around the infrastructure around DeepSeek and how, you can go and you can choose Anthropic.
Really, what we should say is the foundation of Bedrock, right?
Yes,
Of then being able to pivot to all the different models that we have within Bedrock, and DeepSeek being one of them, right?
Absolutely.
I want to just clarify that, because we were like, well, no, we're talking about Bedrock and DeepSeek being in Bedrock.
Yeah, absolutely. And so going to Bedrock and choosing something, Anthropic Claude or something like that, when you start to look at what you're spending, it might be a little bit more than going for something like DeepSeek versus Anthropic Claude as a model. And I think in one of those blogs that we looked at earlier on, Coach, it talked about the infrastructure and what is being utilized so that you can run something like DeepSeek. And so that might be different from something that you would utilize underneath the hood, underneath Bedrock, for you to run something like Anthropic Claude. And there was a specific stat, and it was like 90 to 95% cheaper than running something like Anthropic Claude. And it's all about the infrastructure build, how we're using cheap parts to be able to present DeepSeek as a foundation model to you. So, Coach, we just talked about companies deciding to go big, right? And when I think about startup companies, this is what they want to do. They want to go big, but they don't want to blow their wallets out just to get that done, right? Yeah. And so when you're thinking about migrating to the cloud or just building out an application in the cloud in the first place, you can look back to a few frameworks that will consider something like the well-architected framework, right? It's going to describe that, hey, there's a lot of options for you to put architecture together. But if you're concerned about costs, then, there are options that really do highlight the process being cheaper for you. I can definitely see a company going into the cloud saying DeepSeek might be cheaper. So I'll choose that after I evaluate this framework.
And one of the things that you've said a few times already about evaluation, and Bedrock being that foundational interface where you could perform model evaluation. And we've got model evaluation tools directly built into the interface of Bedrock, where you can determine and understand whether it's through some automated or human evaluation process and what that looks like, and the value add. As I always say, no matter what you're doing, you work backwards from what your use case is. You either work backwards from your requirements, so that as you're building or developing or solutioning or just understanding, right? What are you looking to understand? To me, it's framing the context of what you're evaluating and why you're evaluating certain parameters of that. Because in that evaluation, to me, this is also where you build in responsible AI. This is where you build in the automated reasoning checks, or to help you in understanding and balancing, as we talked about, was it just last week around hallucinations, or maybe it was the week before, right? And understand the fact checking, so to speak, that tends to happen behind the scenes, and some of that control that's within your perimeter of what matters to you, right? Whether it's defining certain policies. It also comes back to me, at least from my years of being in cyber and just as security professional, are the checks and balances. When I think about a NIST cybersecurity control framework, or when I think about a ISO standard, when I think about any of these checks and balances that we tend to focus on,
Mhm.
is it yes or no? Is it green or red? There's
Mhm.
really no in between usually. It's either you're configured properly or you're not. You're meeting the security standards or you're not. There may be some gray area, but that gray area is usually where things happen, right? Where those bad
Yes.
things happen, and where
Yeah.
we don't identify what those gray areas are.